Star Wars only. I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
Timothy Zahn is a Star Wars author, and a lot of people like him because his books are really good and probably some of the best of all time, if not the best of all time. His main books are the Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, and I'm actually reading Dark Force Rising. Well, I'm doing it on Audible, so it's listening to it basically. And they're all really good. I actually really enjoy his books. I also read the first Thrawn book that he came out with, the new canon, and I guess I gotta go pick up Thrawn Alliances with him and Vader and whatnot. But still, Timothy Zahn has come out in defense of Disney on their move to make the EU non-canon. If you don't know what the EU is, it is Expanded Universe. And after Disney bought Lucasfilm, they officially made it non-canon. Whether it was canon or not prior to this has always been fishy. George Lucas himself has always said that he doesn't really look at that. Dave Filoni even talked about how the Clone Wars contradicted a lot of stuff in the Expanded Universe, and it was very hard to keep track of everything. And so Timothy Zahn comes out and he kind of defends Disney on their move on making the EU non-canon. And he says, and I quote, "The biggest problem I think with the Expanding Universe was it got so big and so complex. It was hard not only to keep track of everything, but hard to find some place where you could put a story, and hard to find something that hadn't been done before. I don't want to say that they were deliberately thinking about me when they did this, because a lot of the stuff they were doing is just logic." And when he talks about this, he's talking about how there's similarities between what he did with the Empire and what the new canon basically does with the Empire, making them the First Order. He says, if we chase some of the Empire into the unknown regions, the logical thing for them to do is build up and then come back. It's not necessarily inspired. It's very easy parallel development as well. And alright, so I mean that's really it. And so he basically just talks about what he's saying there is that in the Expanded Universe, the Empire went into the unknown regions, came back, and they're really fucking strong and all this crap, and you got Thrawn. And not many people knew about Thrawn. Like, it was a complete, weird thing when they're like, there's a Grand Admiral, what the fuck? And what happened to the Moffs and everything? And so, everybody kind of freaked out about Thrawn. Well, in the new universe, or the new canon, what happened was, Rax, I think is the name. Is it Rax Primus or something like that? I can't remember. Wait, isn't Rax Prime like a planet? I can't remember. That's from The Force Unleashed. There's a guy named Raxus or whatever the fuck, and he was in the new new canon thing in the what's that stuff called? Aftermath, the Aftermath trilogy. And he was the secret leader of the Empire, and he told them at the end to go to the unknown regions, and that kind of became the First Order, I believe, because I remember Hux had a dad who was involved in that. And so it's weird. I haven't read those books in a long time, but yeah, basically Rax or whatever took them to the unknown regions, and he was like, "All right, motherfuckers, y'all go make the First Order." And that's kind of a parallel what happened, but just with Thrawn and the Empire, and they stayed the Empire. So Timothy Zahn kind of comes out and he does defend Disney on this move. And I'm gonna be honest, I have always defended the move to make the EU non-canon. Reason being is, as much as I love the Thrawn series, the Thrawn trilogy, as much as I love a lot of the EU stories, especially Darth Plagueis and especially Darth Bane. Fuck, I love Darth Bane, and I love the Knights of the Republic stuff, and even Darth Malgus. I really like Darth Malgus' story too. I loved a lot of that stuff. However, it's really hard if you're trying to make, new stories that aren't just a blatant copy. A lot of people want the Thrawn trilogy to be a thing, episodes 7 through 9. That's really hard when the actors are 30-something years older than what they were back then, especially in the Thrawn trilogy. And that's a lot of stuff to work off of. And let's be honest, most books that turn into movies, unless it's like Harry Potter, aren't really that good. I would want to point at the Hunger Games, the Great Gatsby. Stories like that are really good in books, but when it comes to the movies, they're really not that well. So it probably wouldn't have been so well if they adapted the Thrawn trilogy into, its own Star Wars trilogy. It probably wouldn't look the same, and it probably would just it'd probably butcher what the book was, and the books are really good. And so I'm glad that Timothy Zahn kind of came out, because this is the guy, not the father of the EU, but one of the best people in the EU, and this guy who made a lot of the stories. And so it's kind of funny that everyone's like, oh, the EU's got to be canon, and I love the Expanded Universe, and then the guy who is one of the main influences on the EU is like, yeah, no, you're wrong. And so I agree with him. The EU shouldn't have been canon, and I'm glad they made it non-canon. I really wish they would have just kept working on the stories, though. That's kind of disappointing that they just stopped everything. It'd be nice to still get books for them and whatnot, but that would confuse the fans. But Still, I was disappointed with the EU not being canon, but I understood it, and that's the problem is people don't understand it. It's hard to make an episode 7 through 9 when there's like 40, 30 years of backstory you have to cover. You know, you get to episode 7 and it's like, oh, by the way, Luke has a wife named Mara Jade. They have a fucking kid. Han Solo and Leia have like 2 kids, and one goes to the dark side. His name is Jason Solo, and you already had that with Kylo Ren, but then fucking Jason's sister like kills him and shit, and he kills other motherfuckers. It just... There's so much story to cover. There's a Yuuzhan Vong war that you have to go over, which is awesome. There's just too much crap to go over just to get to a new, trilogy. And so it made perfectly logical sense to make the EU non-canon. I'm sorry. I had to say it. I'm just gonna say it. And I said it. So, anyways... That's why Timothy Zahn believes that the EU became non-canon, and I completely agree with him. But do you agree with him? It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what he says. It matters what you say. Yes, you motherfucker. I see you sitting on your couch watching this video. What do you think about this move? Should the EU be canon, or should it be non-canon? Do you agree with Timothy Zahn or not? Do you agree with me or not? Comment your thoughts below. I'm Star Wars only. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see y'all next time. May the Force be with you. Always.